All right, so again, welcome. Excited to share some tips and tricks for some fellow introverts. Before we delve into things, I did kind of want to hear from you all about networking. So each and every one of you are here for a specific reason. There is a lot of interest in today's workshop. So what comes to mind when you think about the word networking? So each of you should have an annotation tool at the top of your Zoom screen. And so I'm going to welcome you to type in any text or message word that comes to mind when you hear the word networking. If you're having trouble, feel free to type in the chat as well. I see talking to other professionals, meeting others, sharing. I love that. Making connections. Maintaining professional relationships. Let me just move some of this. Making connections with potential future collaborators. Stepping out of my comfort zone. I love that. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on today. Transactional. Maybe we can change your mind a little bit about that later on. Connecting and socializing. Thank you. So a lot of talking to professionals, collaboration, connection. I see the C word a lot. Great. So thank you for sharing. Let me save that. And so I hope today we can kind of give you an idea of what networking is, how it's important, and get you more comfortable with the process. So with today's agenda, we're going to give you an overview of what networking is, of course, all the tips to help you as an introvert, crafting your introduction and elevator pitch so you are comfortable sharing who you are as you are in those networking situations. And hopefully we'll have time for some Q&A at the end of today's workshop. I like the graphic on the slide, how introverts network. My personal favorite is the alone part of it. But hopefully today, you'll get a lot of ideas and how you can engage with others when put into different scenarios. So I'm thinking a lot of introverts might be in this session, which is why you're interested in today's workshop. I'm curious to hear if anyone is willing to type in the chat or share with their mic. What are some misconceptions people have about introverts? What are things you often hear as an introvert?
I feel like with introverts, a lot of people assume that they just don't want to be around people or that they don't want to talk or communicate or be social. It's just that we get socially exhausted faster than introverts or extroverts do who gain energy from socializing. It's not that we're like aloof or don't want to be friends with people. It's just our personal time and alone time is our way of recharging.
Yes, Celine, I love that. That's exactly how introverts gain their energy. And part of, what we're talking about today is how can you protect that individual time, but still be effective at networking. Whereas extroverts, they get a lot of energy from being around others. But just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you don't like socializing or being around other people. So in the chat, I see a lot of other comments, non-social, introverts don't have social skills, they're shy, quiet, disengaged, judgmental, we can't maintain relationships. Yeah, lots of great comments, which I think we all know is not true, right? So it's very common, people think introverts are too shy, too quiet, we don't like social situations, but that isn't the case. So if you're an introvert yourself, you'll realize that you are drawn to conversations or interactions where you're passionate or you care deeply about a topic, right? So if you meet someone who has, the same interest as you, you can probably talk for hours about, that scenario because you care deeply about it. So I think it's good to really emphasize the strength you have as introverts and how can we apply that to a networking situation. We're great listeners, right? So part of networking is active listening. So showing that you're engaged, the nodding, the small interjections, the eye contact, smiling, and being able to really hear and listen to what the person has to say, right? Part of building a meaningful connection is hearing them and listening to them. And introverts are great conversationalists. And like I said, if it's a topic that they care deeply about or they're passionate about, you can talk for hours about something. Introverts are also very thoughtful. So we like to think before we speak, right? So when you're meeting with someone during a networking opportunity, what you say will have meaning because you've thought about it. And then I think the biggest thing is networking is about building meaningful connections. I think there's this idea that you should try to meet as many people as you can, but you want to focus on the quality of your connections and making those connections meaningful. And introverts are really great at making those meaningful connections. So I think it's important to reframe what it means, to be an introvert. And I think all of you know that, and kind of really focus on the strengths you have and what that brings to networking. So I appreciate everyone sharing, and Celine, that was a great comment earlier, and you hit the nail on the head with that one. So what I really want you all to take away is, this quote, I love it. The trick for introverts is to honor their styles instead of allowing themselves to be swept up by prevailing norms. So one thing we typically believe, if you're an extrovert, that's the best way to build a network. What I want you to realize, that's one way to build a network, right? So extroverts have certain skills that they're really great in terms of the interactions they have with people, but you can also grow your own network by, realizing your authentic self and how you can use your strengths as an introvert to do that. This quote is by Susan Cain. So just in case you have not heard of her, she was previously an attorney and a consultant. And so she wrote a book through her experiences called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. So I love this book. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But she talks about how modern Western culture misunderstands and undervalues the traits and capabilities of introverts. And so she really dives into, what strengths do we bring in our leadership skills or in social situations. So I highly recommend it. And she also has a TED Talk. So again, my hope that this is something you take away from today's workshop. So networking 101. I'm going to start off with the basic official definition of what networking is. So it is the exchange of information or services among individual groups or institutions. Specifically, the cultivation of productive relationships for career goals or personal aspirations. And so the purpose of networking is to form relationships with those who will help you get you where you want to go. And hopefully it's a mutually beneficial relationship, which we'll talk about later on. but it's important to start thinking about networking, especially now that you are in college. Perfect opportunity to practice those skills and become comfortable networking with others. There are also tons of benefits to networking. So you can gain advice on a potential industry, learn knowledge about your field, expand your network. It's an opportunity to conduct informational interviews, access to alumni mentorship, and then potential contact to interviews. So oftentimes we talk about using networking as a way to find a job and internship. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Research has shown that 80% of job hires occur through contacts. So you can see how powerful networking can be in terms of the job search. You know, one way, of course, are all the online resources we offer, but part of that is also considering the personal context and where that could lead. And, you know, employers like hiring people they trust or they know through someone. So networking is definitely an important tool to have as you search for jobs and internships. So then the next question is, where might you network? So I'm going to ask you all to, again, use the annotation tool, if you don't mind, and share some ideas you have of where you could potentially network with others. Good. Classes, classrooms, LinkedIn, career fairs, info sessions, Starbucks. I love it. Volunteer activities. Badminton court. I love that. Workplace. All right, so thank you for sharing. So there's obviously a lot of places you can network, right? Networking can be as simple as connecting or reconnecting with existing contacts, right? You can easily network with family, friends. It could be, you know, your classmate sitting next to you. All of this is networking. And all of you have had tons of great ideas. Someone said everywhere, which is absolutely correct, right? One thing is, you know, it doesn't have to be a daunting process. And I think the easiest way to think about it is starting with people you know. So I'm going to clear this and kind of highlight, oops, sorry about that. Kind of other ways that you might think about networking. And a lot of you mentioned this when I asked. So social media, this is one great way to network. As an introvert, I love social media because I can take the time to craft exactly what I want to write to someone I want to connect to. So really take advantage of those resources. One way we offer that is the Trojan Network. So this is USC's premier networking platform. Currently, we have over 12,000 alumni, and they are on there for the purposes of guiding and mentoring current students. So if you want to find someone and connect with a fellow Trojan that's doing exactly what you want to do, then I highly recommend logging on to the Trojan Network and making those connections. LinkedIn is another great opportunity. So if you go look at USC's LinkedIn page, we have over 335,000 alums from when I last checked that are on our LinkedIn page. So that's another great opportunity. Of course, we have a lot of formal events through our office, which a lot of you mentioned. So we have our upcoming career fair on February 24th. Tomorrow, we have our Investigate Industries and Internships networking event, where you can meet one-on-one with an employer who might be recruiting for an internship. It could be for any of our Trojan talks. Oftentimes, you guys will have guest speakers come into your classrooms, right? So that's another networking opportunity. It could be connections through your student organizations. So again, networking can be everywhere. But of course, you shouldn't feel overwhelmed, right? It could be small, it could be on a large scale, whatever is most comfortable for you. Okay, so now that we know what networking is, where you can network, we're gonna dive into all the different tips that might help you get there. So tip number one, think about your goal or purpose. So each of us may want to network for different reasons. You know, some examples of goals could be more for career exploration, right? Maybe you just really want to know about your industry. Maybe it's to find a job or internship opportunity. So I know that's a very common goal students will have. Or it could be to find a mentor. You know, it's helpful to have that mentorship and create that relationship of someone who can guide you throughout your career. But goals give you a long-term vision and provide you short-term motivation. So once you have that goal in mind, you can create different steps to get there and hopefully reach that goal. And it doesn't have to be anything huge, right? It could be, you know, email someone through Trojan Network, or set up a Zoom coffee chat with someone, attend career fair. So these are all small things that you can start working towards in terms of your long-term goals. So really think about what your goal is with networking. This is my favorite tip. Tip number 2, know yourself. And it sounds like you're here because you know you're an introvert and you know yourself, right? So I've already mentioned this, start small, reach out to people you already know. Another thing I want to emphasize is know when you're at your best, right? So if you're not a morning person, then don't set up a Zoom coffee chat when you know you're not at your best. Choose environments that you feel comfortable in, right? Earlier, we mentioned the importance of protecting our individual time. So, you know, when you're at your best is when you've had time to recharge. And then weigh the benefits of a networking opportunity. So let's say you're at a conference, don't feel pressure to go to every single session if that's just going to burn you out. Weigh out which opportunity will be the most engaging and beneficial for you. And so I'm going to give you just, you know, a quick example just based on my personal experience. I actually started working at the Career Center in September, so I'm new to the USC campus. No affiliation to USC. I won't say which rival school I'm affiliated with, but everything was new to me. So something that our division does, which is USC Student Affairs, is we have monthly coffee chats. So this is where we get all the different departments under our division, where you have the opportunity to talk to other colleagues. So me being an introvert, you know, it's kind of scary to put myself in that situation, but I thought about it and I pushed myself out of my comfort zone. One, because I knew I'd be interacting with colleagues that cared about what I did, right? We're all doing the same work. We love students. I'll be able to connect and talk to someone about, you know, what we do here. And so I went and it was a great opportunity. Second time it came up, I asked a colleague to go with me, right? So you don't have to go to these networking things by yourself. Oftentimes it's just easy, like ask your roommate to go with you, ask a friend, hey, do you want to go to this event with me? And, you know, that second time around, my colleague introduced me to other colleagues. And so it made it a really fun opportunity. The next coffee chat, I did not go, right? Because I knew myself. during that time, I had different social, I'll say social responsibilities, but I had different appointments, things where I was interacting with a lot of people. So I knew I wouldn't be my best if I were to attend this. So then that's what I talk about. You should know yourself, know when it's a good time for you, but also try to kind of step out of your comfort zone from time to time and weigh out the benefits of when something might be a good opportunity for you. And I don't regret it. I've met lots of people since I've been here, and I just make sure I find my time to recharge whenever I'm doing some hardcore networking. All right, tip number 3, plan ahead. So whenever I'm put into networking situations, it's always easier for me when I'm prepared. I already have questions I want to ask. I have a topic in mind that I might bring up. I already know how to introduce myself to other people. So practicing your introduction and your elevator pitch. Also researching the person you might be meeting with or the organizations that might be there. So let's say you have a classroom presentation or a guest speaker coming to your class, you research them ahead of time, you raise your hand, ask a question. You're going to stand out a lot more as someone who's done their research versus someone who hasn't. So that's really going to impress the employer. So I highly recommend just preparing ahead of time so you know what to expect and you're more comfortable in your interactions with them. And it also boosts your confidence. You know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing. So when we talk about preparing, right, we just wanted to touch on conversation. So conversation 101. If I ask this room who likes small talk, I probably will not get anyone raising their hands, right? Introverts do not like small talk. It's probably our least favorite thing to do. So what I am going to tell you, it is important to learn how to do it and have that skill. Okay, we are going to constantly be in situations where we might have to do some small talk, right? So my challenge for you today is to do that with someone, right? You're talking to the cashier at the bookstore or that floor mate you've kind of been avoiding because you don't want to have an interaction. Initiate that small talk. It's good practice. So for me, whenever I meet with students, my question is, how's your semester going so far? That's just my question because I truly do care, but it also opens it up. Maybe it gives me a gauge if how comfortable they are with sharing information with me. Maybe it tells me they're struggling this semester, but either way, it's just a good opener to see how they're doing and hopefully build that rapport with the student. So the same idea can be said with small talk. So once you kind of get that going, the next thing is open-ended questions. So what we're going to talk about in the next slide is the Tiara Method. This was created by Steve Dalton. He coaches MBA students at Duke University, and he wrote this book called The 2-Hour Job Search. And so the idea with the Tiara Method is you begin by treating your conversation with your contact as an expert. And then over the course of the conversation, it shifts in tone where your contact becomes more of a mentor or coach. And so your goal is to hopefully turn them into an advocate for you. So we'll kind of show you the progression of those questions that you can use and practice when networking. And then of course, next steps. So whenever you have a conversation, you want to be able to end the conversation. Completely up to you if this is a connection you want to continue or not, but you always want to thank them. Let them know what you will do as a result of their advice, and then ask them if you can stay in touch, right? To get further suggestions or to update them on your progress. Can I add you on my LinkedIn? Is it okay if I get your business card? So find a way to wrap up the conversation. Okay, so this is what we talk about in terms of the Tiara method. So these are sample questions that hopefully, lead to opportunities through networking. So feel free to take a screenshot or, take a picture if you want to save these questions. And again, we'll also have this available for you. So the first question is usually a trend. Again, we're treating your person as an expert, right? What trends are impacting your organization right now? Or how has your industry changed? I also like these questions because they're very specific and they get to the heart of something. These questions have a lot of meaning, right? It's really kind of far away from that whole small talk situation. So you're really learning more about the person and the organization. The next one is insights. So what surprises you most about your job? What's the best lesson you've learned? So you're trying to get insight into what it's like working here, how have they become successful? And then the next one is advice. So again, the questions are getting more specific and kind of asking them as a potential mentor or coach. What can I be doing now to prepare myself for a career? What advice do you have for me as a student pursuing this industry? Resources. What resources should I look into next? Or what steps would you recommend for someone in my situation? And then assignments. So I like the last part of it, assignments, because if you take a look at one of the questions, have you had any interns in the past? If so, what sorts of projects have they done? So this is your opportunity to kind of plant a seed. Have you market yourself, right? So if they talk about a certain project and you've done exactly that, then this is your opportunity to really share yourself and your strengths and your skills. So hopefully, if they do have an intern in the past and they need one in the future, they might think about you. Or maybe they've never had an intern and realized how much of an asset you could be to that organization. So that's basically the idea with the Tiara method. I think it's a great way to glean a lot of information with the employer, the industry, but also, try to find ways to really bring up how you can also be beneficial to them in terms of your skills and what you bring to the table. And again, it doesn't end after this, right? We're focused on also building connections. These are questions that could come at one time. It could come, through multiple sessions. But eventually the idea is planting that seed and hopefully them thinking of you as a potential candidate if you were seeking an opportunity. All right, so I'm gonna pass it on to Jen for tip number 4.
So as the extrovert, I've been dying to talk, but I love Stephanie so much. I just love hearing her perspective of this. Because we work on the same team and we do the same type of job, we just do it a little differently, right? So I'll just share that one of the tips to throw in there that my husband uses as the introvert that he is. Unfortunately, he does a lot of travel for work, which is kind of like, oh, but this past trip was hilarious. And he told me, he's like, oh, the one part about the travel he actually likes is the networking. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, because I'm talking to people about stuff that I love. I'm like, that makes sense. And that's exactly what Stephanie was talking about. But this last trip, it was hilarious. He actually wore his USC sweatshirt on the plane. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do that because I'm going to South Carolina. So he's like, I like that it's an easy conversation to talk to someone who has the other USC sweatshirt on because it's an easy conversation. And then if it's a USC, like USC, our USC, then people are like, oh, how you doing? Fight on. And they flash from the fight on. And then the other piece I thought was hilarious this morning that he told me, he's like, tell your students this, that the other funny thing that happens from this is that there's a lot of people who like maybe are not Pac-10 lovers, or maybe they're UCLA people. And we're like, oh, Trojans. So either way, this sweatshirt is bringing on conversations that he might not necessarily always want to bring on himself. So it's just little things like that. So anytime I see somebody with a USC sweatshirt on at the grocery store or on the train or whatever, I'll say, hey, fight on. And if they choose to engage, that's fine. And if they don't, whatever. But because I don't know if the person wants to talk, but I think it's kind of a fun opener if I do that. But anyway, so just a little tip on the side. So tip number 4, it says you reach out first. So, so you might have a person like me who says, hey, fight on, and you can choose to engage, or put yourself out there and introduce yourself and say, hey, you know what? I'm looking for information about XYZ. Found you on LinkedIn, noticed you had an internship in a similar area that I'm interested in. Could you give me some advice on ways to make sure that I am capitalizing on my experience as best as I can? Very, very simple things. It could be coffee chat. It could be Zoom. It could just be, maybe you start the conversation off with email, and that's fine. Build rapport by email, but sometimes you need to take the initiative. And so planning those things out, sometimes what I tell folks to do is maybe you plan certain days of the week that you do the networking so that you kind of know it's built into your schedule. Because you know what, it's kind of easy to blow off if you're not really that excited about it. But if you know that on Mondays and Thursdays in the afternoons when you're a little bit more charged, that might be the good time to do it. And then have a plan for who you're going to reach out to and then what you're going to say, and start tracking all that. Because one of the neat things that I have found happens is that once you ask one person a question, and maybe the question is like, just advice on, how to find an internship or whatever, you say, is there anybody else you think I should contact? And they're like, yeah, my friend. And then here we are building your network of extra people. Then you can email that person and say, hey, Jen O'Connor recommended I contact you because I had a question about blah, blah, blah. Do you think there could be a time that we could talk about that? And here we are. Now you already have another person to talk to. And, it's just, and it's a more familiar person because you've already been vetted by the first person who recommended you. So I think it's always a nice plan to do it, and to schedule it ahead of time, I think is a really good time. I know that my husband's best time is in the morning when we're all out of the house. So when I work from home on Thursdays, I hear him networking like a maniac in the mornings. And I know that's because that's his time. By the afternoon, he's wiped out. By the afternoon, he's ready to play some video games and clear his brain. And I know that, and I do not mess with his video game time. But I just know that that's how he works it. So that works for him. So anyway, so Stephanie here, why don't you move it to the next slide, unless you had something to add to it. You're good. Okay, sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone. So this one is the elevator pitch. And the elevator pitch can be called several things. It can be called an elevator pitch. Some people call it capsule biography. Some people call the 30-second commercial. It's all the same stuff. Basically, what we're trying to do is get you ready for a really short conversation and, kind of engaging with the person. So, theoretically, you want to think about introducing yourself in 30 seconds or less. And usually it's less. Quite honestly, it's less. You might use this, like the name the elevator, but you could also use it at a career fair. So you're not going to talk about yourself for a minute at a career fair. Why would you do that, right? But you do at least want to spend a little bit of time preparing to, this is my name, this is my major, this is what I'm interested in. I had a question about XYZ. Some people might choose to throw in a little bit of their experiences they had maybe over the summer in an internship or what they're doing now, maybe a couple goals. And while they're doing this, and this all takes practice, you want to be presenting yourself in an engaging way. So being positive, making sure you're smiling, making sure you're not hunched over, you're not looking at things randomly like you're on it, right? And so knowing what situations that you'll be in when you're doing this is important. So what I tell folks to do, and extroverts have to practice too, because I put my foot in my mouth all the time. That is what extroverts do. It just happens. In my opinion, practice in front of a mirror. We have a resource online called Big Interview. Big Interview, you can actually record yourself doing the tell me about yourself question. It's the same thing. Tell me about yourself, elevator pitch, 30-second commercial. It's kind of like the same vibe. You're just trying to get some basic information out there to the person that you're engaging with, right? So listen to what you're saying. When you actually say it in a mirror, you can listen, you see yourself and listen and be like, did I ramble? Is this too much? Would I want to answer this person's questions? And if the answer is no, start over and you keep practicing until you get it right. But you don't have to launch into this big old long thing. What you really want to do is connect with the person that's in front of you and figure out how can I start a conversation with them. Now, I will say this, at a career fair, the people at the table, they know to ask you the question. So what brings you here? Or what can I help you with? Or, what's interesting about the positions that you saw or something. They'll know that first question probably at a career fair. But if you're in a situation like in an elevator or in the hallway, or, someone shoots you the fight on and you choose to be brave and engage in the conversation, we want you to be able to launch into something that will kind of build some commonality with that person. So you're not probably looking for a job at the grocery store, obviously, but you might as well take advantage and say, hey, I'm at school now. This is my major. What did you major in? Nothing wrong with not asking for something in the very beginning. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'd rather you don't. I'd rather say, hey, what did you major in while you were in school? Oh, what did you choose to do after you graduated? How's it been? Do you love your job? Go for it. Just start. I know you're probably like, oh, it's so painful, but it gets easier the more you do it, but just be ready because the audience will be different. So when you're stuck in that elevator at a career fair, you need to talk about my major and what I'm interested in. But at the grocery stores, church, community service, launch into just normal, what'd you major in college, and just kind of go for it. But we want to make sure that people know that this is not a painful situation for you. So don't wince. Be ready. And if it's not the right time, like Stephanie said, don't do it. Just play along and, it's fine. But anyway, so Stephanie, anything that you think I missed on that one? Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move to the next slide. So here we go with the examples of elevator pitches, and see, they're all different, right? So we'll break it down into phases. So phase one is, now, sometimes we shake hands now and sometimes we don't. Right now, I'm not a handshaker. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm not really doing the handshake thing. I'm like, hey, I do this. Hey, how are you doing? Which is fine. So at the career fair, you say, hey, I'm Jen O'Connor. How's your day been going? That's it. Recruiters would probably love that because they've been having so many people ask them just, hey, I saw that internship. Can you give me more information? You actually saying, how's it been going so far? Super nice. And it's different and it shakes it up. And it probably is a little easier for you, right? Because then it gives you a little bit breathing room. Sometimes you have to give yourself some time to think about what you want to say next. And again, extroverts, we have to do it too, because I don't want to sound like a babbling idiot, right? So I have to give myself a breather too. So say, how's your day going so far? How's it been going? What a great day for a career fair. Super. And then you can breathe, because then they'll answer and you're like, okay, let me think about what I'm going to say next. And then you launch into, well, I am here at the career fair because I'm a junior, thinking about an internship in marketing. I had a great internship last semester and looking to continue that. Would love to do some research and saw that your position was posted. Would love to talk to you about that. Because you're asking for what you want, and they're at the career fair in this situation because they want to find a candidate. So know that they want to meet you. This is not a situation where you're like begging them for anything. They want to meet you. They are here because they love USC students, and they should. You guys are awesome. So that's that. They're looking for you, right? So, so phase three here, when it says inquiry, it says, when I worked as, as an employer with XYZ marketing, I would, hope you could tell me more about the internship I saw. If you're at the mixer, like say you go to the I3 mixer, what's your role? Do you love working here? How do you look for candidates, for this role? Just roll with it. You intrinsically want to ask these questions, right? So just take a breath, and I would say just get ready, because the one thing I've learned is that once you ask the question, the recruiters will be on it, or the representative, whatever you want to call them, depends on the event. They're happy to answer your questions. In fact, they're kind of relieved, I think, that you're asking them good questions. So sometimes what I saw folks to do at the career fair, for example, you'll have your little, your folder with the resumes in it and stuff. And I'll say, put a Post-it note on it. And for every resume that you're going to give to the employer, and by the way, some employers are not taking resumes. They want everything electronically, but whatever. Have a Post-it note that says, this is what I want to talk about to this employer. Prepare it. Know that this person I want to talk to this about, and have another Post-it note. This is what I'm going to talk about this about. And then you just, and then afterwards you take some notes, and that'll be in some slides later, but just know what you talk to the people about, because you want information and you're going to be nervous, and they know you're going to be nervous. They know. So that's why they have good opener questions and things, but for you to say to them, how you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you about different internships I've been looking at. Easy. You don't have to launch into this big thing in the beginning until you get your nerves ready and going like that. So that would be my best advice for the elevator pitch is prepare what you're going to say for different situations and then practice it. And then just know that the person you're speaking with might also be an introvert and also just wants to keep the conversation nice and easy. So don't go for the gusto in the very, very beginning is the best advice I would say. So yes. All right. So what other, I think we're on, what's the next slide? I think 5, 6, 5. I forget the numbers. Oh, the pitch. Okay. So there is going to be a section of this presentation where we're going to actually break folks apart to help you practice your pitch. Do not leave just now. We want you to practice with us. But this is what we're going to ask you to think about. We want you to think about how you might want to introduce yourself, name, major, school, whatever, if there's an activity you love doing, put that as part of your pitch. And then we want you to describe some of the different experiences that you've had that you would want this other person to know about you. So maybe it's an interest, maybe something like specially qualified. Some people, if you have certain language skills that maybe different employers might want, things like that. Maybe throw in a little bit of your goal in there. So for example, let's take it out of the context of the career fair. Let's talk about, my husband shoots you the fight on the airport. You're like, I'll engage, let's go. You can go in there and say, you know what? Yeah, I am an economics major and I'm focusing on becoming an analyst after I graduate. And, I would love to know if you've ever experienced, if you ever took econ classes at USC and how those went for you. Even like, you might not even care what my husband's econ classes were about, but it's just like you're engaging with him about that. And, you come up with your own ways. But anyway, but knowing what you're thinking about doing is important because if someone asks you, you want to be able to know what to say. So, and it's okay that you don't have the exact answer, but say, hey, I'm thinking about maybe an analyst role. I really like doing modeling. I like doing forecasting. So kind of something in the space of that, still trying to decide. It's okay to have the still trying to decide part. That's not a problem. People get it. We've all been there, right? And then for part number 4, there's a call to action piece. It says, explain what you're working toward and why, and then why. And you tailor it to the certain people. So for example, we have on our YouTube channel a really great post on what to say at the Thanksgiving Day table. For those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, you'll know that sometimes you get peppered from family asking you what you want to do and what's your internship and what's your job. And so what we did was we talked about how do you handle those questions when you don't know the answers. And so just be ready. Anybody can be asking you anytime. So know that you have to tailor towards specific audiences. So it could just be asking for information. I'm not the type that asks people on LinkedIn, like, hey, do you know anybody that could give me a job? I never recommend that to anybody. It's awkward for you. It's awkward for them. You don't know them. They don't know you. But just saying, is there anybody you think I could talk to about potential internships? It gives you an easy ask, gives them an easy yes or no, and it gives you another person potentially that you might be able to contact with. So that's how I do. So we want you to do this, to practice this now in a safe space. So let's move to the next slide. So this is basically a script that we would, and please screenshot this if you can, because we want you to take this as, you have to do verbatim. In fact, I hope you change it up a little bit, but use this as a template for what you might want to use when you make your pitch. So, hi, my name is X. I'm completing a degree in X with my minor or whatever, involved in this. These are skills I'm working on, looking for positions related to this or this. Could you tell me more about, like, I say that, I know I talk super fast, I'm an extrovert, but you're going to come up with your own thing, right? This is just a template to get your juices flowing and to start really thinking about, well, what I say when it's my time, because we want you to be prepared, because when someone asks you, I know that everybody is tempted to just say whatever comes to your mind. I don't want you to feel that way. I want you to really feel ready. So that's why Stephanie put this together for you. And I think it's a really, really great starting point. And then once you start getting used, like at the career fair, by the end of the career fair, oh my gosh, you should, it gets so much easier. At the end of the day, it's a long day. Usually you start in the morning, you're like, oh, by the end of the day, you're so used to talking about yourself, it's crazy, but because you're forcing yourself. So this is a nice way to get ready now. So with that, Stephanie, how do you want to handle the next piece?
Yeah, Nikita, I hear you. They said, is anyone?
Stay with me, Nikita, stay with me,
this
stay with me.
exercise? Okay, I mean, we were gonna do breakout sessions, or we could share in a large group. Any preference? I'm gonna let everyone in this room have input. If not, our goal is to do a breakout session for practice for 5 minutes. And I think it will be great to just go out of your comfort zone with 2 or 3 other people and share your pitch. Okay, so I'm gonna break everyone out into breakout rooms. Feel free to take a screenshot if you need to. I want you to practice with the other people in your room. And after they share their pitch, give one positive feedback. What did you like about their elevator pitch? Okay, so I'm going to.
We're all learners here.
Yes.
We're all trying to get used to this now. And I hear you, Nikita. I hear you.
It's a safe
roll
space.
with it. Roll with it. Let's get this done now.
So I'm
So at
going
least you'll
to
get more on.
send an invite to you all, and we'll give 5 minutes. So it's gonna go really fast.
And then we'll come back.
Yep. I'm gonna pause the recording. Okay, so I know everyone's joining us back from our breakout session. Nikita, I'm glad you said it was pretty painless. Anyone want to share their experience with their breakout rooms? You can share in the chat. What was your experience? Karen, did you have something?
Yeah, so for me, like I was very nervous in the beginning, but then as we started talking, like I got more comfortable.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I was in a group with Karen, and it was just like not jumping into the pitch. It was easier to just start talking and reading the room, getting the feel for the tone before even jumping into any sort of pitch, quote unquote.
Love it.
Yes.
Exactly.
My groupmate and I actually had some common work experience, so that actually really helped.
See? Nice. Yep.
Tina, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, so me and Whitney were speaking, like just introducing ourselves, and we realized like when we were talking, it was like that small chit chat we were doing kind of just filled out the whole template without us kind of like looking at it. So like just like the natural flow of conversation kind of took us to like the pitch.
I love that. And I think that's, the best way to think about it. What is natural for you in this moment, right? Like if you meet with an employer at a career fair, don't feel like you have to say that pitch right away. Try to go with the flow. Good. Jerry says, felt easier speaking with a fellow student. Not sure if the same thing applies with a recruiter. Well, that recruiter used to be a student and probably knows exactly what you're feeling, right? So I know someone mentioned this earlier, we're all human. Everyone gets nervous. For example, I'm a career counselor, but interviewing is still a process that I'm nervous about, right? So these are all normal feelings, but it's how do you prepare and how do you practice so it becomes easier for you. But great point, Jerry. Well, we appreciate everyone sharing. We're not going to ask anyone to share in the large group. But again, continue to practice your elevator pitch. If you want to share with one of us during an appointment or drop-ins, you're welcome to do that. But I'm glad each of you had the opportunity to kind of practice and stay. Half the group left, but I'm not mad at that. I
Mhm.
completely understand. So great job seeing it through and practicing with your group. So we're wrapping up, and I'll let Jen finish with 2 more tips, and then we have a video at the end to wrap up our workshop.
And I'll talk super fast. Okay, so you want to follow up with the process. So when you connect with somebody, you say, hey, I would love to talk to you about this. Make sure you're there. Make sure you're on time. In fact, maybe even be a little early, make sure you stay connected. Make sure that you document the conversations. I use Excel a lot, and I would actually recommend using something like that. You can definitely document who you've been connecting with on the Trojan Network. I did put the link to the Trojan Network up in the chat above, and that'll help you stay connected also with people and see who you talked with and things like that. And if they don't get back to you, send an email. Now, not like the next day, but maybe give it a couple days and say, hey, I just want to circle back and see if we could talk about XYZ. You don't have to do it every day, but just circle back. If they're really important to you, then go for it. And then make sure, I love this. It's important to nourish your connections as well. Share updates with people. Tell some of your classmates, like, hey, this is what I've been doing. Say happy birthday to somebody. My husband spends so much time saying happy birthday on Facebook and LinkedIn, but why not? It's a nice thing to do, right? And it's easy. It's just click, 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 done, boom. Sharing articles that might be related to similar interests, awesome. Reflecting, saying, thank you so much for sharing your insight on XYZ. I really took to heart about that. And actually the next class I took, they actually talked about that. So I really appreciated that you shared that with me, because that really made an impression on me. Thank you so much. Thank yous go a very long way when you're networking. And it's also, well, actually, this is the next slide. So here, what's next? Giving take. I call it like karma. It's like how the Trojan family works. You give and you take. Right now, you might need information, right? But later, I hope that you be the information provider, right? So keep track of who you're talking with and see what they might need help with. And if you landed a great internship and then you meet someone else next year who might need an internship, you're like, I had a really great experience last semester. I bet you my recruiter could have a conversation with you and see if this might be a good fit. Do you think you would want to talk to that person? I can put in a good word for you. Like those, you want someone to treat you like that, right? It's kind of like a golden rule. You treat them like that, they treat you like this. So it's a give and take. So just kind of keeping track of people, knowing who can help and things like that is important. And then knowing what you have to offer. So just as the Trojan family will give, you also want to give back. So it's very, very simple. And but sometimes you have to plan it out, and it's fine to be thinking about that, but that's always critical. And so I love this graphic that Stephanie found, because it really does explain this, and the network, it grows. People will say, I love that article. I sent it to my friend. Feel free to give them a call. If that's something you're interested in, give them a call, because they might be able to help you with an internship in that. And it does, it builds a web. So with that, I know Stephanie has a really, really great video she wants to share, and it's really something. So I know we're running a little late, but this is good. So go for it.
Yes, I know we're running out of time. This is our last tip. So I'm going to share, it's a 1-minute video. So if you're able to stay, we love it. But I'm going to go ahead and play it.
There's an idea called free trait theory, and it comes from a fantastic personality psychologist named Brian Little. Professor Little is a very strong introvert. He's also a world-class public speaker. He is one of the best public speakers you will ever see. And when he's on stage, you would have no idea that he's an introvert. And he does it because he cares so much about the ideas that he wants to convey and about his audiences that he's just giving every drop of himself. But when he gets off that stage, he is utterly drained and doesn't want to do the small talk. So he kind of jokes around about it, but it's true. He will always race off to the nearest restroom where he can hide and be by himself. And from this personal experience grew a whole field of psychology that he invented called free trait theory. And this is the idea that all of us have our core passions, work that we love and people that we love. And in the service of these core passions, we have to sometimes act out of character. And it's uncomfortable to do that. But that's okay if we're acting out of character in the service of things that really matter. But it's only okay if we then take what Professor Little calls restorative niches, which are the places we go or the things that we do to bring us back into character. If you have a day full of pitch meetings, You want to also schedule a solitude meeting with yourself, and that's going to be your restorative niche. No matter what life you are living, every life calls for you to act out of character some of the time, and it's only okay to do that if you feel entitled to come back and be yourself.
So I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, right? And I love the video because it really speaks to what networking can feel sometimes, or kind of playing out of character. But it's something that's an important skill to have. But let's say you have a long day of career fair, take your restorative niche and your alone time to recharge. And that's something I've learned the hard way. It's really important as an introvert to understand that I need that time to myself, and it's okay. That's how I get my energy. So definitely think of what your restorative niches are and really, make that a priority. And so we wanted to end the workshop with just our last few tidbits. Make sure you know yourself and what works for you. We talked a lot about that. Practice your pitch. You got a little snapshot of that today. Practice, stay positive. Jen emphasized the importance of following up and staying connected. Make time for your restorative niches, and then be yourself. We're awesome as introverts, and so we definitely want to use our strengths. So that's pretty much the end of our workshop. We did want to ask you before you leave, if you wanted to stamp, what you plan to do to kind of keep you accountable, what your next steps are after today's workshop. Feel free to, stamp in what you want to do next. And then I know we've gone over time, but we will stay back if any of you have questions for us. But thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Later. Bye-bye. Practice
Thank you.
today. Practice today. Yeah. Well, at least think about practicing today. Just think about it.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi, so I've noticed that so I've been trying to get out of my comfort zone, just getting out of my shell. So it seems as if I have this social mode I can turn on to kind of talk to people, but then other times I just turn it off and be comfortable. But sometimes a problem that I run into is that I sometimes come off as inconsistent, because sometimes I'm like social mode on and sometimes I'm like not sociable. And one thing that happened is like I was kind of at this event and I turned my social mode on with one person, but not with another person. And that other person is like, oh, you don't like me. And the person just kind of disliked me as a return. And I just kind of get worried about this inconsistency. And I also know I cannot just kind of keep my social mode on all the time. So is there any advice for that?
Yeah, I think, it's normal to have moments where you want to socialize and where you don't want to, be as social. So I think it goes back to really knowing yourself when, certain times you might have a connection with someone. And so you might tend to gravitate towards them more and talk to them more, whereas someone, maybe you need that break in between, right? To go from person to person to person can be exhausting. And I think it's okay to be in that situation and not feel pressure to do that. If you need to, like we saw in the video, right? That person had to leave, like, excuse me for a minute while, I do this. Or a great way is maybe in that moment, you are unable to, talk to them in the way you'd want to. That's a great way to get their contact information. Be like, hey, do you mind if we keep in touch? I'd love to touch base with you next week. And then maybe you can pick up the conversation from there.
I see. That's a great advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great questions.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I can do the
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.